I'm a 38-year-old guy from Ohio, married 11 years. One kid, white picket fence, minivan, boring suburb, the whole American postcard lie. My wife, Rachel, always said we were solid. That word feels like a joke now. Here's the part that still makes my stomach flip. I wasn't invited to my own daughter's birthday. Rachel told me 2 weeks ago that she was handling something small for our daughter Emily's 9th birthday. She said it would just be a few girlfriends and their kids. Nothing big. Nothing worth me taking time off work for. Her exact words were, "Don't stress, Mark. It's low-key." That should have been my first red flag, because Rachel doesn't do low-key. She does control. For context, the last year of our marriage has felt off. Not explosive. Not dramatic. Just cold. She guarded her phone like it contained nuclear codes. She suddenly needed space. She accused me of being paranoid anytime I asked basic questions like why she was getting dressed up to run errands on a Tuesday afternoon. I told myself this was just marriage fatigue. Everyone online says marriages have seasons, right? Yeah, turns out this was hunting season. The day of Emily's birthday, Rachel took her early in the morning. Balloons in the trunk. Wrapped presents I hadn't seen. She kissed my cheek and said, "We'll be back late. Don't wait up." I remember standing in the driveway watching them leave, feeling like an extra in my own life. Something in my chest tightened, but I ignored it. Men are trained to ignore that feeling. That night, while reheating leftovers alone, I opened Instagram. Big mistake. The first story I saw was from one of Rachel's friends. Bright pink balloons. A custom cake. A banner that said, "Emily's Day Sparkling Heart." And there, right in the middle of the frame, was a man I hadn't seen in over a decade. Jason, Rachel's ex. The guy she once told me was toxic, manipulative, and a phase she was embarrassed about. The guy whose name she swore I'd never hear again. And there he was, smiling, holding my daughter's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't scream. I didn't even curse. I just nodded. That's what scares me the most. Something inside me shut off cleanly, like a breaker flipping. No rage. No denial. Just clarity. I clicked through every story. Every angle. Jason cutting the cake. Jason laughing with Rachel. Jason standing where I should have been standing. And the caption on one photo finished me. Private family moment. Family. Not me. I sat there in the dark realizing this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was a decision. A series of choices Rachel had been making for months, maybe longer, while lying straight to my face and sleeping next to me every night. When Rachel finally came home close to midnight, I was still on the couch. Lights off. Phone face down. She froze when she saw me, like a kid caught sneaking back into the house. "Why are you awake?" she asked. That was it. No apology. No explanation. No mention of Jason. I smiled and said, "Happy birthday to our daughter." Her face went pale. She opened her mouth to lie. I could see it forming. And that's when I realized something terrifyingly calm. I didn't need the truth anymore. I already had it. And I hadn't even started digging yet. I didn't confront her that night. Not because I was scared, but because I suddenly understood something most people never do in time. The first person to speak loses leverage. Rachel stood there waiting for me to explode. That's what she's always done when she's guilty, braced for impact, ready with a script. When I didn't raise my voice, when I didn't ask, "Why is your ex at our daughter's birthday?" her eyes narrowed. Confusion replaced fear. She hates that. Rachel needs control the way other people need oxygen. "I was just tired," she finally said, dropping her purse a little too hard on the counter. "Long day." I nodded again. Same nod as before. Neutral. Empty. She studied my face, searching for cracks. There were none. I'd already sealed them shut. That night, she didn't touch me. Didn't even pretend to. She rolled over with her phone glowing under the covers, thumb moving fast. I stared at the ceiling and replayed the Instagram stories frame by frame in my head, like security footage. Jason's arm around Rachel's waist. Emily leaning into him like she'd done it 100 times before. That's when it hit me. This wasn't new. The next morning, Rachel was overly sweet. Coffee made. Eggs cooked. Fake smiles served hot. She asked about my day before I'd even had a sip. That told me everything I needed to know. She thought she got away with it. I went to work and did absolutely nothing productive. Instead, I pulled phone records. Not illegally. We're still married, same account. Funny thing about cheaters. They think deleting messages deletes evidence. It doesn't. It just rearranges it. Jason's number was there. Not saved. Just a long chain of unknown calls going back months. Late night calls. Early morning calls. Calls during times she claimed she was at yoga or grabbing coffee with the girls. My chest burned, but my hands were steady. Then I checked our shared iPad at home, the one Rachel never uses. iCloud is a snitch. Deleted photos don't disappear right away. They just hide like cowards. I found pictures of them at a hotel. No faces at first, just reflections. Her tattoo on his chest, his watch on her wrist. Then one full shot. Them in a mirror, her smile wide and relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in years. Timestamped. 2 weeks before Emily's birthday. That's when the anger finally arrived. Not loud. Not explosive. Cold. Focused. The kind that doesn't want to yell, it wants to finish things. When Rachel got home that evening, I casually asked, "Hey, how long have you and Jason been talking again?" She froze for half a second. Just half. But I caught it. "What?" she laughed. "Too quick. Why would you even ask that?" I shrugged. "Just curious." She launched into it like a pro. Gaslighting. Deflection. Offense as defense. She accused me of stalking her. Of being insecure. Of imagining things. She even brought up my job stress, like that explained her ex-boyfriend's hand on my daughter. And then she said the line that permanently ended our marriage. "You're overreacting. Jason is just family." I looked at her and realized I didn't recognize this woman at all. Not my wife. Not my partner. Not the mother I thought she was. Just someone who lied easily and slept well afterward. That night, while she slept peacefully beside me, I sat in the dark and started a notes file on my phone. Once you stop seeing your spouse as your spouse and start seeing them as an opponent, everything sharpens. I didn't sleep much after that. Not because I was heartbroken. That came later. But because my brain was running scenarios like a war room. Every lie Rachel had ever told suddenly rearranged itself into a pattern. Every girl's night. Every unexplained mood swing. Every time she made me feel crazy for asking reasonable questions. Gaslighting isn't loud. It's quiet. It's repetitive. And it works best on people who want to believe. The next few days, I played dumb. I kissed her goodbye in the mornings. Asked about her day. Laughed at her jokes. I watched her relax again. Watched her guard drop. Cheaters always do that when they think the danger has passed. They get sloppy. They mistake silence for forgiveness. On Thursday, Rachel told me she was going to a work dinner. She even named the restaurant without me asking. Over-explaining, another tell. I waited exactly 20 minutes after she left before checking her car's location. Still active. Still shared. Another oversight on her part. She wasn't at the restaurant. She was at a hotel. Not the one from the photos. A different one. Same side of town. That's when the sadness finally punched through the anger. Not the crying kind, the hollow kind. The realization that while I was home helping Emily with homework and packing lunches, my wife was actively building a second life. I didn't follow her. Didn't confront her. I did something better. I called a lawyer. His name was Daniel Brooks. Mid-40s. Calm voice. No moral lectures. He didn't ask me how I felt. He asked me what I wanted. I told him the truth. I want my daughters safe. And I don't want to be blindsided. Daniel paused, then said something I'll never forget. "Then don't give her the chance." He walked me through documentation, evidence, timelines. He explained how infidelity itself doesn't always matter in court, but patterns of deception involving a child do. A secret birthday party. An unrelated man playing father. Decisions made without my consent. Judges don't like surprises, he said, especially when they involve kids. That night, Rachel came home smelling like hotel soap and cheap confidence. She kissed me, too long, like she was trying to convince herself of something. "Work dinner went late," she said. I nodded. "Must have been exhausting," I replied. She smiled. Relief flooded her face. She went to bed without another word. I stayed up and printed everything. Phone records, photos, locations, messages, screenshots labeled, dated, organized. By the time the sun came up, my marriage existed neatly inside a 3-inch binder. Here's the part I'm not proud of, but I'm not ashamed either. I checked Emily's tablet. Kids don't lock things down the way adults do. Messages popped up immediately. Photos of her with Jason. Voice notes calling him Uncle Jay. A text from Rachel saying, "Don't tell Daddy yet. It's our little secret." That sentence broke something fundamental in me. Not because she cheated. Because she recruited my child into the lie. That's when this stopped being about betrayal and started being about protection. When Rachel woke up that morning, she found me making breakfast like always. Pancakes, bacon, coffee. She smiled at me like nothing was wrong. And for the first time since I met her, I saw her clearly. Not as my wife, but as a risk. I didn't confront Rachel after that. Not right away. I needed to see how far she'd go once she thought I was fully under control again. Turns out, pretty far. The following week, she suggested something she'd never suggested before. Maybe Jason could take Emily to the zoo sometime, she said casually while scrolling her phone. He's great with kids. I looked up slowly. Why would my wife's ex-boyfriend be taking my daughter anywhere? She rolled her eyes like I was embarrassing her. God, Mark, you're so dramatic. He's basically family at this point. That word again. Family. I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my voice calm. Does Emily know him well? Rachel hesitated. Just a flicker. They've talked. A bit. That was a lie. I already knew it. But hearing it out loud, watching how easily it slid off her tongue, was something else entirely. Later that night, after Emily went to bed, I asked Rachel directly, "How long have you been seeing Jason?" She laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh my God, are you still stuck on that?" she said. "You saw one picture and built a whole fantasy." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse her. I just said, "Rachel, look at me." She didn't. That's when she flipped the script. She accused me of emotional neglect, of being distant, of choosing work over her. She cried on cue, told me she felt lonely and unseen, claimed Jason was just someone who listened, that nothing physical had happened. Classic. I asked her one last question. "Did you tell Emily to keep secrets from me?" Her face hardened instantly. "Don't drag our daughter into this," she snapped. That was answer enough. The next morning, I took a personal day and met Daniel in his office. I handed him the binder. He didn't react emotionally, just nodded, flipping pages, making notes. "This is strong," he said finally, "especially the child involvement." "What do we do?" I asked. He leaned back. "We wait, and we document a little more." That same afternoon, Rachel texted me something that made my blood run cold. "Jason is coming over tonight. I already told Emily. Don't make it weird." She didn't ask. She informed. I went home early and sat at the kitchen table when they arrived. Jason looked surprised to see me. Rachel looked annoyed. "Hey man," Jason said, extending his hand like we were equals. I didn't stand up, didn't shake it. I looked at Rachel and said calmly, "You invited another man into my house without asking me." She crossed her arms. "It's not your house. It's ours." "No," I replied. "Not anymore." Silence dropped like a bomb. Jason suddenly found the floor very interesting. Emily looked confused. Rachel's face flushed red with anger. "You're being controlling," she hissed. "This is exactly why." "Stop," I said. My voice didn't shake. "You don't get to rewrite reality anymore." That night ended without a scene. Jason left awkwardly. Emily went to bed quiet. Rachel slept in the guest room. And I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, knowing the point of no return had already passed. Rachel thought this was a power struggle. She had no idea it was a countdown. The next morning, Rachel acted like none of it happened. That's not an exaggeration. She made coffee. She packed Emily's lunch. She asked me if I could pick up milk on the way home like we were still playing house in some low-budget sitcom. That level of denial isn't accidental, it's strategy. If she pretended everything was normal long enough, maybe I'd start doubting myself again. I didn't. Instead, I watched her closely. How relaxed she was. How unbothered. How confident. That confidence didn't come from innocence. It came from believing she still had the upper hand. She didn't know the board had already flipped. 2 days later, she escalated. She told me she wanted a trial separation. Not because she'd done anything wrong, according to her, but because I was emotionally unsafe. Her words. She said she needed space to think, and that Emily should stay primarily with her for consistency. That's when the gloves came off. I asked her calmly, "Where would you be staying?" She didn't hesitate. "With Jason. Just temporarily." Just temporarily. Like it was a storage unit. Like she hadn't already been emotionally living there for months. I nodded, pulled out my phone, and said, "Okay." That single word rattled her more than yelling ever could. She narrowed her eyes. "Okay, what?" "Okay," I repeated. "I agree to a separation." Her shoulders relaxed instantly. She thought she'd won. Thought I'd folded. Then I added, "But Emily stays with me." Her face snapped. "No, absolutely not." I looked her dead in the eye. "You don't get to move our daughter into another man's house without my consent, especially not a man you've been lying about." She lost it, screaming, crying, accusations. She said I was threatening her. She said I was trying to control her life. She said I was punishing her for having needs. I didn't interrupt. When she finally ran out of breath, I said quietly, "I already spoke to a lawyer." That did it. The color drained from her face. "You what?" "I've documented everything," I continued. "The secret birthday, the hotel visits, the messages, the lies, involving Emily." She laughed, sharp and nervous. "You're bluffing." I slid my phone across the table and played one audio clip. Emily's voice. "Mommy said not to tell you about Uncle Jay yet." Rachel stared at the phone like it had betrayed her. "You went through her tablet?" she snapped. I leaned forward. "You put our daughter in the middle of your affair. Don't talk to me about boundaries." She stood up so fast the chair tipped over. "You're disgusting. You're trying to steal my child." "No," I said calmly. "I'm trying to protect her." That night, Rachel packed a bag and left. Not quietly, not gracefully, slamming doors, crying loudly enough for Emily to hear. One last manipulation attempt on her way out. Emily clung to me, confused, asking where Mommy was going. I told her the truth, the age-appropriate version. Mom needs some time to figure things out. Rachel didn't look back when she left. She thought this was the beginning of her freedom. What it actually was the moment she officially abandoned her position. And courts don't look kindly on that. The first night Rachel didn't come home, the house felt different. Quieter, yes, but also clearer. Like someone had finally opened a window after years of stale air. Emily slept in my bed that night. She didn't ask to. She just crawled in around 2 a.m., clutching her stuffed rabbit, eyes wide but dry. That broke me more than anything Rachel had done. Kids don't need explanations, they need stability. And Rachel had just chosen chaos. The next morning, Rachel texted like nothing was wrong. "I'll pick Emily up Friday." Jason cleared space for her. I stared at the message for a full minute before replying. "No, she stays here." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "You can't do this. She's my daughter too." That word again. My. I forwarded the message to Daniel and didn't respond. By noon, Rachel had shifted tactics. Now she was concerned. She asked if Emily was eating, if she was okay emotionally, if I was saying bad things about Mommy. The sudden interest would have been laughable if it wasn't so transparent. That afternoon, Daniel filed an emergency motion. Temporary custody. Exclusive use of the marital home. A formal request noting Rachel's departure, her cohabitation with a romantic partner, and her attempt to relocate our child without consent. Paper beats emotion every time. Rachel showed up at the house that evening unannounced. Not alone. Jason stood behind her on the porch like a backup plan in human form. Emily froze when she saw them through the window. Rachel tried to push past me. "We're just here to talk." "No," I said, stepping outside and closing the door behind me. "You don't get to ambush my daughter." Jason cleared his throat. "Man, you're blowing this way out of." I held up a hand. "This conversation isn't for you." Rachel snapped. "He has every right to be here." I looked straight at Jason. "Leave." He hesitated. Rachel didn't like that. "Jason," she said sharply. "Go to the car." That told me everything. Not equals. Not partners. He was already just a tool. Once he was gone, Rachel dropped the act. She hissed. "You think this is going to work? You think some paperwork makes you the hero?" "No," I said. "It makes me the parent who stayed." She laughed bitterly. "You're punishing me for falling in love." I leaned closer. "No, I'm responding to you lying, abandoning your home, and dragging our child into your affair." Her eyes flashed. "You'll regret this." That was the moment I knew she still didn't understand. Regret belongs to people who hesitate. That night, I tucked Emily in, read her the same book we always read, and promised her something I wasn't sure I could legally guarantee yet, but emotionally, I could. "I'm not going anywhere," I told her. Across town, Rachel was playing house in someone else's apartment, convinced she was finally winning. She didn't know the judge had already seen the file. She didn't know the narrative had flipped. And she definitely didn't know that the next move wouldn't come from anger. It would come from the system. Court doesn't look like TV. There's no shouting. No dramatic confessions. No moment where the guilty party collapses in tears and admits everything. What there is paperwork, timelines, and adults quietly judging your decisions while pretending they aren't. Rachel didn't take it seriously at first. When she got served the emergency custody papers, she called me laughing. Actually laughing. "This is insane," she said. "You really think a judge is going to side with you because I stayed with my boyfriend for a week?" I didn't correct her. Let her keep thinking this was about romance. The first hearing was quick. Temporary orders. The judge was an older woman with tired eyes. The kind of person who's seen every lie in the book and doesn't need footnotes anymore. Rachel showed up late. Jason wasn't allowed in the room. That alone rattled her. Her lawyer tried to frame the situation as an emotionally stifling marriage and painted Rachel as a woman who'd finally found the courage to leave. They used words like growth and self-discovery. Then Daniel stood up. He didn't talk about my feelings. He didn't talk about love or betrayal. He talked about patterns. He laid out the timeline. Secret communications, hotel stays, the birthday party I wasn't invited to, the introduction of a romantic partner to a minor child without consent, the explicit instruction to keep secrets from the other parent. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Rachel kept shifting in her seat. Her confidence started leaking out through her posture. She interrupted once, just once, and the judge shut her down hard. "Ms. Miller," the judge said, "you will not speak unless asked." Rachel looked at me then. Really looked. That was the first time I saw fear in her eyes. The temporary ruling came down 15 minutes later. Emily would remain with me. Rachel would have supervised visitation, temporarily. No overnights. No third parties present. Jason was legally erased from the picture in under an hour. Outside the courtroom, Rachel exploded. "You planned this," she screamed, not caring who heard. "You manipulated everything." I stayed calm. "You documented everything yourself." "I just organized it." Her lawyer pulled her away before she could say something worse. That night, Rachel sent me a long email. Pages. Apologies mixed with accusations. She said she'd been confused. That Jason wasn't that serious. That she wanted to work on us. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded it to Daniel. He replied with one sentence. "Good. She's panicking." Emily asked that night why Mommy seemed sad lately. I told her the truth. Again, the version a kid can carry without breaking. "Sometimes adults make bad choices," I said. "But that doesn't mean they stop loving you." She nodded and went back to coloring. Kids are resilient when at least one parent is steady. Rachel, meanwhile, was unraveling. Jason stopped answering her calls once he realized this wasn't a fun affair anymore. It was lawyers, restrictions, and accountability. The man who helped break my family couldn't even handle being mildly inconvenienced. Funny how that works. By the end of the week, Rachel wasn't fighting me anymore. She was fighting reality. And reality doesn't negotiate. Once the court stripped away Rachel's illusion of control, she started doing what she does best when cornered. She rewrote history. Suddenly, she wasn't the woman who lied, cheated, and involved her child. She was the victim of a cold, calculating husband. She posted vague quotes on Facebook about narcissists and emotional abuse. She texted mutual friends selectively edited versions of events. She even tried to convince Emily that Daddy was keeping Mommy away. That last one almost cost her everything. Emily mentioned it casually one night while brushing her teeth. "Mommy said you're mad at her, and that's why she can't come home." I felt my chest tighten, but I kept my voice steady. "Did Mommy say that?" She nodded. I documented it. Date, time, exact wording. Then I emailed Daniel. He called me within 10 minutes. "This helps," he said. "A lot." At the next supervised visitation, Rachel cried the entire time. Loudly. The kind of crying meant to perform, not to heal. She hugged Emily too tightly, whispered things she thought no one could hear. The supervisor noted everything. Rachel glared at me afterward like I'd personally designed the system to humiliate her. "This isn't fair," she said, tears streaking her mascara. "You're turning my own child against me." "No," I replied. "Your choices did that." That's when she snapped. "You were never enough for me," she said through clenched teeth. "Jason made me feel alive. You just existed." I didn't flinch. "I existed," I said, "where it mattered." That night, Daniel called again. "Rachel's lawyer wants to talk settlement." That surprised me. Rachel doesn't fold easily, which meant something else had happened. I found out 2 days later. Jason had dumped her. No dramatic speech. No closure. Just a text saying he didn't sign up for this level of drama and that he needed to focus on his own life. The man she detonated her family for vanished the moment consequences showed up. Rachel spiraled. She missed a scheduled visitation. Then another. She sent drunk emails at 2 a.m., swinging wildly between apologies and threats. She accused me of stealing her life. She begged me to remember what we had. I didn't respond. Because the truth is, I finally saw what we actually had. A marriage where I carried responsibility. And she carried entitlement. The custody evaluator came to the house that week. She watched how Emily interacted with me. Calm. Safe. Open. Then she met Rachel separately. Her report was devastating. Father provides consistency, emotional stability, and structure. Mother demonstrates impulsivity, boundary issues, and poor judgment involving third parties. Legal language. Surgical. Brutal. Rachel called me after she read it. Her voice was small, almost unrecognizable. I didn't think you'd really do this, she said. I closed my eyes. I didn't think you'd really do that, I replied. Silence. For the first time since this started, she had no comeback. Because some bridges don't burn in flames. They collapse quietly, under the weight of your own actions. The next few weeks were surreal. Rachel oscillated between furious attempts to manipulate and complete withdrawal. She stopped calling Jason entirely. She didn't need him anymore. Her role as the villain in our story was now fully hers alone to carry. Supervised visitations became a ritual of tension. Rachel would arrive on time, but her eyes darted around the room, calculating, measuring me, measuring Emily. She tried to slip subtle poison into casual conversation. Daddy just doesn't understand how hard it is to be a mom sometimes. Emily barely blinked. She was learning what stability looked like, what honesty sounded like. One evening, Rachel went further. She cornered me in the kitchen while Emily was asleep upstairs. Her voice was low, almost pleading. Mark, I can change. I can fix this. We can still be a family. I let her talk. Every lie she had rehearsed, every justification she had polished over months, poured out. She said I was too controlling, too suspicious, too cold, that all she wanted was love and excitement, that she'd lost herself in the monotony of family life. Finally, I said something I'll never forget. Rachel, you don't get to choose excitement over responsibility and call it love. You chose a man who didn't care about your child, you chose lies over honesty, and you chose chaos over your family. That's not fixable. That's reality. Her face went pale, a split second of panic that she hadn't rehearsed. She tried to argue, but the words stumbled out like cheap confetti. I didn't flinch, and then I did something that felt terrifyingly good. I reached into the binder, the one with all her lies, all her manipulations, all the evidence, and laid it on the counter. Every secret, every lie, every betrayal. It's all here, I said, and you thought you were untouchable. She went rigid, eyes wide, mouth open, no words, nothing left to say. The next morning, the final custody hearing was scheduled. Rachel didn't sleep that night, texting frantically, calling, trying to charm, trying to threaten, trying to bargain. The system she thought she could play now moved faster than she could manipulate. The judge reviewed the binder. Every timestamp, every message, every photo, the supervised visitation reports, the emails. The ruling was clear, devastating, and precise. Emily would remain with me. Rachel would have monitored, limited visitation, no third parties, and immediate compliance with counseling requirements. Jason was legally irrelevant. Rachel's freedom was intact, but her influence over my child, over my family, was gone. That night, I finally exhaled. Emily climbed into bed with me, curled up, and whispered, "Daddy, I'm glad you're here." And for the first time in months, I felt the raw, simple power of truth, justice, and responsibility winning. Rachel sent one last message that night, her words empty, her power gone. "I hope you're happy. I hope she remembers me." I didn't reply, because some lessons aren't learned in words. Some lessons are lived. The days after the ruling were surreal. Rachel still tried, occasional texts, half-hearted calls, desperate attempts to guilt me with phrases like, "I just want to be part of her life." But the weight had shifted. The leverage she once held, secrecy, manipulation, and my assumed compliance, was gone. Every lie she had told, every hidden meeting, every secret she thought she could bury had been unearthed and cataloged. She couldn't hide anymore. Emily thrived. She laughed louder, slept easier, and asked fewer confusing questions. She didn't need to carry the burden of her mother's chaos. I watched her grow each day in a safe, predictable environment, something Rachel had refused to provide for years. That alone felt like victory. Not revenge, not spite, just truth in action. Rachel tried one final stunt. She showed up at the house unannounced, clearly hoping to provoke a reaction. She slammed the door, waved her phone at me, and yelled something about lawyers and rights. I didn't rise to it. I stayed calm, watched Emily peek around the corner, and calmly said, "Mom, if you want to see her, you follow the rules. Otherwise, leave." She left. No argument. No plan. Nothing. Just the echo of someone who had exhausted all manipulations and found the game had already ended. Weeks later, the divorce was finalized. Rachel got her freedom, her apartment, and her dreams of self-discovery. Jason? Irrelevant. She had sacrificed stability, trust, and access to our child for a fantasy that crumbled as soon as reality showed up. For me, the lesson wasn't about victory over Rachel. It was about clarity, about recognizing who I was married to, who I allowed into my life, and what my responsibilities truly were. Betrayal hurts. It rips through the foundation of everything you thought was safe. But when faced with it, you either fold, or you act with precision, logic, and unshakable focus on what truly matters: protection, truth, and the people who depend on you. Emily still calls me every night before bed. She still hugs me tightly in the mornings. She laughs in ways that remind me why every painstaking step I took was worth it. Rachel? She's a chapter, not the story. And some chapters, no matter how loud, no longer get to write themselves over the rest of your life. I share this not for sympathy or applause. I share it because someone out there might be in my shoes, watching, doubting, fearing, hoping. My advice: document, observe, protect, and above all, don't let someone else's lies define your life or your child's life. Some betrayals feel endless, but justice, patience, and unwavering focus can transform even the deepest wounds into a path forward. And for the first time in over a year, I slept without the knot in my chest. Because some battles are won quietly, and some victories, they don't need to be loud.